Sunderland are back to winning ways. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the ROKER RAPPORT podcast, or good evening, or good morning, or whenever time of day you are listening. What's principally important is that Sunderland have won a game. They have beaten Accrington Stanley 3-1 yet again in a performance far more convincing than that which saw us lose 3-0 to Peterborough, and generally all is more or less pretty happy back in the Jack Ross camp, as far as most of us are concerned anyhow. But anyway, let's get on discussing the game as it is today. I am joined in the studio by Craig once again. How are you, Craig?
Very well. How are you?
I'm not too bad. I'm all right. I'm also joined by Sam. How you doing?
I'm good, mate. How are you?
Again, not bad. And I'm also joined by local journalist Richard Mennear. How are you, Richard?
I'm not so bad. How are you?
Well, third time lucky. Yeah. I've not changed from 10 seconds ago. I'm still decent. So yeah, Sunderland have, as I've said there, dispatched Accrington Stanley 3-1 thanks to a lovely goal from Lyndon Gooch. A fairly poor defensive cock-up that let Aidan McGeady slide in and get a second. And finally, we got a third from Mark McNulty after some good build-up play from Conor McLaughlin. So all things considered, it was a game that I'm sure that we're all pretty satisfied with. It's 3 points in the bag, 3 goals scored. Another sloppy goal conceded, but I suppose if you're scoring 3 and tripling that which you concede, it's not the end of the world. So let's just jump straight into the discussion as we don't have the 3-word review this week. Let's start with you, Craig. What were your thoughts on the game?
Overall, I'm very happy with this. We were, again, quite slow out of the blocks, and I think it was just a telling sign straight away when Accrington were knocking on the door that a goal was coming. Again, silly, sloppy defending, something hopefully that we will try and fix in the weeks going forward. But again, I thought we showed tremendous character to equalise pretty much straight away because, pretty much where I was standing, there was a lot of aggravation among supporters. So it was important that we got on level terms straight away and just kicking on from there. I think the tempo of the second half was pretty much played like a friendly, if you like, or a cup game. But yeah, overall, I'm over the moon. We had the game killed off by half time.
Mm-hmm. All the action did really happen in the first half, didn't it?
Yeah.
All things considered. So I think it's very good to see a Sunderland side just sort of put themselves ahead and then see a game out.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I know there was a couple of comments online and a few things that was going around about people saying perhaps we really should have took the game to them more in the second half, which, is a fair point, especially with Peterborough scoring so many, same with Rotherham. But the way I look at it is I personally believe that we reduced the tempo somewhat. We were calm and composed. We didn't overdo ourselves, but I believe that's because we had at least one eye leaning towards Tuesday, which is a much, much bigger game. So I think it's important that, we certainly retained a professional kind of outlook on the game. And we're seeing it out without really any difficulty, I thought, in that second half.
What were your thoughts on the game, Sam?
To win any game pretty comfortably 3-1 away from home in the end, you've got to be happy with it. And it's a job well done, really. Like Craig said, slightly alarming to concede yet again early on. We still haven't got a clean sheet, but to get right back into the game like we did 2 or 3 minutes later with the goal Gooch scored was exactly how you'd want them to respond. And then we were clinical after that in the first half, taking the chances. And then, like Craig said, I think it would have been nice in the second half to see us go for it and be a bit ruthless. But I think they did have an eye on Tuesday night, which is a big game against Rotherham, and their tails will be up after scoring 6. So goes on to Tuesday night. But no, it was important to come back well and get a good result after what happened to Peterborough 2 weeks ago. So we got the job done, which was the main thing, really.
Yeah, I think it's very likely that the Peterborough game, being the last fixture we played for a fortnight, was probably it might have been lingering on the players' minds, and it was certainly the last taste left in the fans' mouth, and it was certainly a bad one. So was it good to just quickly dispel that with another comfortable win?
Yeah, it was all about the result really after Peterborough. I mean, the performance is important, but what happened to Peterborough, it was important to bounce back, so we could just put it down to a one-off game rather than it being the start of something. So to do that comfortably yesterday was a job well done. I think Ross and the players will be pleased, to be honest.
I suppose as well, even if we were to say a bad game against Peterborough came round every once in a while, I mean, not that I want us to lose 3-0 once every 5 games, but let's say that you were to lose. If we've got a form record every 5 games of win, lose, win, 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 then I think we're not looking too bad, really, are we?
No, exactly. We're going to be there and thereabouts if we continue in where we are. So that's the main thing, really.
Bit of an accidental Steve Bruce moment there, mine, but
I know, I've been listening to
there or thereabouts. Yeah. Anyway, speaking of conceding first, now there were many positives to take away from that game, but one outstanding negative is once again we've conceded an early daft goal, which, as you'll remember, is an issue that plagued the early stages of last season as well. Now, obviously, our perceptions as Sunderland fans are going to be coloured and we'll have a red and white rose-tinted lens. But Richard, obviously, if you're approaching this game from another point of view, if you are looking at Sunderland from the outset and you're seeing a team that is winning most of its games and winning them with some clinical players, but they're conceding a daft goal each game, how does that bode really for the entirety of the season, given what and who Sunderland have?
It's a good question. I mean, I guess, the lack of clean sheets is an issue for Sunderland, but the way that Jack Ross has sort of changed the system since the Accrington game in the Carabao Cup, when they went to 4 at the back, and when you do that, you're going to give up more of the midfield battle line because you've got less players in the midfield. So I think Sunderland kind of accept that the games are going to be more open, which would benefit Sunderland because they have, realistically in this level, 3 or 4 match winners, not just Aidan McGeady, but Mark McNulty, I like him a lot. He's got goals in him. Chris Maguire, we know, can be excellent on his day. Lyndon Gooch, if he can add that consistency, he can win games as well. Hopefully Will Grigg at some point will start firing. So I think Sunderland accept that, if they give up a little bit in that midfield, then that does mean that the opposition is going to have a bit more of the play, that the game is going to be more open. But personally, I think that suits Sunderland. And just to go back to your point on, in terms of sort of losing the odd game, you're far better if you lose one and then win 4 or 5. You're far better off doing that than 3, 4 draws on the run, because 17 draws is what cost them automatic promotion last season, isn't it? So I think Sunderland fans could probably just about put up with the odd defeat as long as they're stringing together 4 or 5 runs. And I think the way they're playing, certainly going to be goals in the game for both sides. But yeah, to be fair to Accrington started well yesterday. I thought Accrington really pressed quite high, very quickly.
They were very unlucky not to get an equaliser as well. That one
hit the crossbar, didn't they?
Yeah, well, and they hit it in a very unlucky way, didn't they? It sort of bounced off the floor, then onto the crossbar, if I'm remembering that right, yeah.
And then within a minute or two, I think Sunderland went to the other end. Dobson got it, released Maguire. Maguire did really well, and they obviously got the second goal. Or was that the third goal? I forget. Second or third, whichever one it was. But a little bit of luck for Sunderland. But as I say, I think you've just got to accept that the way Sunderland are going to be playing now, there's going to be chances at both ends of the pitch. And Jack Ross is banking that he's got enough match winners within his team, which he does, to win enough games to string together a run that will get them up this season.
And if you take the point of view as well that stats don't lie, I mean, I saw this, I forget where from, I can't give you the source, but I saw it yesterday. In terms of chances taken, Sunderland are the most clinical side in the league. Just for sheer conversion.
Yeah, I mean, Jack Ross praised them for their sort of clinical and ruthless edge yesterday. Some fans would question how ruthless they were, because they could and maybe should have added, or should have looked to add a few more in the second half, boost the goal difference, because obviously if they're conceding a lot, that's not going to help the goal difference. And as we know, goal difference could be key come the end of the season. But they were clinical, yeah, because to go behind after 5 minutes, bit of a nightmare start. Excellent to bounce back within 2 minutes. Superb finish by Lyndon Gooch. If you haven't seen it, then I would urge you to get on YouTube and have a look, because that is a stunning finish. Really good play from Denver Hume as well. Quick thinking from the throw-in, and then a brilliant cross. And then to be 3-1 up after, half an hour or so, game was really over at half-time. The next goal would have been key. If Accrington would have got it, and would have been pretty nervy. I know John McLaughlin's got a little bit of stick. Not stick, maybe stick's the wrong word, but a bit of concern at times in the last couple of games, but he made a couple of important saves towards the second half. There was one particular block at the near post, which, if that had gone in, then it would have been a really nervy finish. But second half was dull, it was pretty drab, but it was professional, and I don't think you can argue with the 3-1 away win.
At the end of the day, drab second halves feel a lot better when your team's 2 goals to the good, which is ultimately what matters. But anyway, let's come back to Lyndon Gooch's goal, because we need to give that the airtime it deserves. We'll go back to you, Craig. Let's talk about Lyndon Gooch's goal. Just say however you feel when you think about that.
I think from the offset, Denver Hume needs a lot of praise for getting the ball into the box.
Definitely.
I think it was an excellent delivery. With the pace that it was whipped in, you would expect someone like, if Charlie Wyke, for example, was playing, if that's on target, it's going in pretty much 99 times out of 100. But the thing is, as Richard mentioned, certainly looking at it on YouTube, it looked like it was just behind Lyndon Gooch.
Yeah, it was.
So the technique that he had to basically swing his body in such a short space of time and to score in the manner that he did, it was an unbelievable finish. I'm pretty certain it won Sky Sports goal of the day.
It did
Yesterday.
It did, yes.
Had nothing to do with us retweeting the life out of Tom White on Sky, who basically insisted that everybody give it a push. No, but it was an excellent finish, and I'm really pleased for Lyndon Gooch because he does come under an awful lot of scrutiny from time. We know he's got quality in abundance. Perhaps there is, large spells of time where he doesn't show what he's quite capable of, but look, the start he's had the season, I think he's been excellent, and it was an excellent finish.
Yeah, and I think I was saying earlier as well, I was saying it to you, Sam, wasn't I? That if we're going to criticise Gooch now, that perhaps he's not having the best games overall, but he's scoring in most games.
Yeah.
Well, funnily enough, that's the exact same criticism we levelled at Managerial as well. I mean, I was very guilty of that last season. I used to say at the start of last season, he's not doing much, but yeah, he is scoring, and I would use that as a means of being dissatisfied with Madger. But if we look at the circumstances now, what would you give to have a player like Madger back?
Yeah, I mean, we've done that one to death, haven't we? Madger got it, Lewis Grabban got it the season before. You can go back as far as even the likes of Darren Bent, people like that. Their job is not so much to get stuck in and fight back and tackle out. I appreciate that's going to be Lyndon Gooch's job, of course, but in terms of what he's doing at the moment, his pros are outweighing the negatives, of course. If he's scoring goals, there was obviously a lot of goals you needed to replace when you lose the quality of Josh Madger. Even when you've lost Lee Cattermole, he produced 7 goals last season. So it's important that you need to try and fill the void and get everybody to chip in. So the fact that he's got 3 already, it's a promising start.
It's just adding that consistency, isn't it, for Lyndon Gooch?
Yeah,
Which
absolutely.
he's spoken about, to be fair to him himself, quite a lot, and he had a massive dip, didn't he, post-January probably last season? I think he only scored once after Christmas.
Yeah, he made loads of assists before that.
Yeah,
All of his output just dried up from January onward.
Jack Ross has made reference to it, and Lyndon Gooch has made reference to it, and I guess that last season was his first year in terms of playing that many games in the first team. I think 47, 45 games, something like that. It's just basically now adding that consistency over the course of the season. But what's he got? 3 in 9, I think, this season. If he does it over the course of the season, then you'd be talking, how's your maths? 15 goals?
Yeah.
Which,
for an inside forward, you're laughing.
Excellent,
If that's one of your wingers getting 15, you can only imagine what your strikers must be doing. But that's probably a good inroad into our next discussion, which is probably not an outstanding negative that's been prevalent across Sunderland's time in League One, but it's something that's really just sort of disappointing to have to go over, and that's, of course, Will Grigg. He had another good chance yesterday and he spurned it in the second half. I mean, Craig, you were saying there that we probably should, that a lot of fans wanted us to go and really see the game out by killing them off and adding to the goal difference. But, well, you would say Grigg had a very good chance to do that, to at least make it 4-1. And, I look at that goal, the one I think McGeady slides it into him. I mean, he's running onto it and he's a bit late getting there and it's quite a hard one to reach. But ultimately, I could imagine that if that's Grigg at any of his other clubs like Wigan or wherever, that he's probably putting that away.
It was a bit of a heavy pass, I think, in defence of Grigg. I mean, look, I think obviously, again, he comes under a lot of scrutiny. He threw himself about, I thought, quite well yesterday. It's not for a lack of effort. It's confidence, isn't it? And I think when the ball's come to him, he's in 2 minds. He's in 2 minds whether he's going to put it at the keeper's near post, and he beat Evtimov, if I'm saying that right. He beat him last season with a pretty much of a similar ball to him, and he put it straight through the keeper's legs. So I'm not sure if he's torn between that. But look, the keeper made himself big. He didn't drop. I think it was a good save. I personally think it was a good save. Could he have scored from there? Should he have scored from there? Perhaps, if he's got more confidence. If that comes through to McGeady or Maguire, I'm expecting 4-1.
Well, that's it. And when you look at a player like Grigg, now before Grigg came to us, he was heralded as one of the best ever strikers to play in the 3rd division of English football. So I think if you were assuming that, say, Chris Maguire's going to put it away, most people who've watched League One football over the years will put Grigg as a better finisher than Chris Maguire.
Yeah.
So by that logic, you'd probably say that he should really be putting it away. I mean, does it come down to confidence? Does the style of play just not suit him? What do you think, Sam?
It's hard to put your finger on it because I don't know if I still do. I still think that Grigg is the best finisher at the club. I mean, I don't know about McNulty. I haven't seen too much of him. But in terms of if I've got Charlie White or Will Grigg running 1-on-1, I'd want Will Grigg. But I don't know, you look at things like yesterday, and I think McGeady could have made it easier for him with the pass. I still think he's got to score. I mean, I know it was unlucky. It's not like he's missed the ball or anything. But one of the pros, if there is any, is I know his work rate was called upon at the start of the season. But like you were saying, Craig, he's came on a few times and he's put himself about. And I think if he continues to do that, maybe he's a substitute and nicks a goal, then he'll be laughing because I mean, I was at Burnley and it was a great finish at Burnley.
Yeah. Oh,
It was
very
just
good.
an instinctive Will Grigg goal. Takes it one touch, doesn't even look up, just hits the back of the net. And I mean, that's what we're signing him for. So,
Do you think he needs to be involved more? You look at the first half and you think that chance which McNulty, it's an open goal. All of the legwork was done for him.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, if Will Grigg gets that spot of luck, there
Exactly,
you go, he might be up and running, who knows? But should he be involved more? Should he be starting? I appreciate McNulty's doing very well, but should we be, trying to get Grigg back bang into form? He's our player. It's a big investment. Should he be starting?
To be honest, I think that's quite a contentious point, really, because I think you could easily make a case for any of our three main front men to start. Obviously, McNulty has just scored. He showed a lot of promise so far. There'll be plenty of fans who look at him thinking, right, here's a new striker who's come, with a lot of momentum, a lot of promise, and we probably would like him to see him, getting double figures this season. Yeah. Then there's Charlie Wyke, who has, frequently tried. I think perhaps some of the more sentimental fans among us probably would just want Wyke to really get a good run together. Had the early injury, had a few naff games, but he has shown that he is a very capable striker, perhaps not contributing mainly to finishing, but he's done a lot for the team. And I think, those who, as I say, are a bit more sentimental would probably want to see his work rate rewarded with goals. And then, of course, you've got Grigg, who you just look at him and you think, you really should have got up and running by now. So perhaps we should be doing more ourselves to ensure that does indeed transpire. It's a tricky one.
I don't think Sunderland can start him just to try and play him into form. I mean, I personally would stick with the side that played yesterday, probably. For now, he should have scored that. I mean, looking at it, it looked like it was straight at the keeper. The pass might have been slightly heavy. It looked a bad miss in real time, and looking back on television, it looked even worse, really. Either side of the keeper, and that's in, isn't it? Mm-hmm. That said...
You put it down in at the right. I mean, I'm saying this as someone who's never played professional football.
Yeah, no, me too, yeah, for sure. I mean... that side, I thought his general play was okay, and I thought it has been for a couple of games leading up to that Burnley. I thought he's been okay, actually, and I know he wanted praise from Jack Ross, so I don't think there's an issue with his work rate or his form outside his work rate for the team and stuff. You just hope that he would kick on after that Burnley goal, and hopefully he still will. But for me, I'd probably keep him on the bench at the minute.
I think I would. I think I would probably, if I was the gaffer, I'd find it initially a difficult decision.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I would stick with what I suppose you would call the winning team and just keep him on the bench.
Because Jack Ross is under so much pressure, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's going to be throughout the whole season. You can win 5, great. You lose 1, then the world caves in.
He's always one defeat away from that, isn't he?
Yeah.
That was the alarming thing yesterday. Yeah. I think, especially when you go 1-0 down so quickly, it's unbelievable the amount of comments that can get thrown in. Well, he said he wanted so many clean sheets. That's gone again. And all of the negatives are just spurned into just a mass kind of abuse for 2 minutes, and then bang, we're back on level terms and changes all of a sudden.
Yeah, it is like a big game of hokey-cokey. It's just, Ross is in, Ross is out. We're shaking him all about, metaphorically. But, the point stands that, it's a tricky one. And you know what? I was watching, something I never do, is watch Sunday Supplement, even more to the point with Tony Pulis on. I would never normally...
stood up? Did he have his cap on?
Honestly, he was sat down and he had nothing on his head. It was bizarre. But yeah, but I would never normally paraphrase Tony Pulis, even less so do I watch Sunday Supplement. But, point stands, he was saying that he feels that in the modern game of football, that managers just do not have any time. Like, for a manager to get anything underway and to get any system going, he needs, in his opinion, at least 2 years, but I would say at least 1. At the end of the day.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, Ross has got one season under his belt now. To build anything, you need the time to construct an identity. And, I find his accent fairly difficult to discern every now and then, but I'm pretty sure that was what he was getting at.
It's a resurrection project, really, isn't it?
I mean, absolutely.
The way that we fell out of the Premier League without barely an effort, and then it got worse the following season. We assembled a team of let's be fair, there weren't championship players. It was just misfits, wasn't it?
Yeah, championship players with an asterisk.
Yeah, misfits and bench warmers that we assembled together, who lo and behold we fell through another league, so we've replaced all of them. And then again, we've not a high turnover in the summer, but a few faces have gone. Some of the higher earners, we've replaced them. And I mean, at this stage of the season, I think we've made some half decent signings.
Absolutely.
I think we are where I would certainly expect at this stage of the season. As it's been mentioned, you continue this sort of form. The question was raised last season, wasn't it, in terms of, if we draw so many games, would it be worth losing one? And we're currently in that pattern now, and the same people who raised that last season are now unhappy with that. So what does it take for him to basically have those people off his back? Because we're not going to win every game. We're not that good. No team in this league is that good. So Look, I don't know. I feel he gets an awful lot of scrutiny and unfair pressure. I guess that comes with the territory, but yeah, I think he's doing a good job.
And I was going to say it's a League One team now, isn't it?
It is. It's
Like,
very
they
much a
came,
League
they came
One
down
team.
last year and they had a sprinkling of players who could or should be playing at high level. But now we've got an 11 that is of this standard. So with that, you're going to get inconsistency. Otherwise, they'd be playing in the Premier League.
I mean, personally, I thought George Dobson was very good yesterday. But you look where he's come from. He's come from a team who literally fell out of this league again. So
he was signed from a League Two club.
Exactly that. So the reality is, I mean, we are pooling together a lot of players now. A lot of the young lads who are coming through, the likes of your Denver Humes, and it is going to take a while. It's not an easy fix. It's not an overnight case. I know, obviously, we'll mention if rather than it has about the takeover. If the takeover goes through, we're not just going to throw tens of millions of pounds to fix this. And we wouldn't want to do that anyway, because we'll just fall back into the same mess that we did the last time. We've got to have our thinking heads on here. And this is going to take a little while to resolve itself.
Absolutely. I think we said it on the pod with Brady last week that the issue that Sunderland and other clubs as well that let's say hypothetically encounter a lot of good fortune is that you run the risk of just sort of without a short just buying players in, getting managers, allowing them to make the wrong choices by just sort of haphazardly spending money. And what you end up with is what we knew last season is the culmination of a decade of financial mismanagement. You get each manager trying to construct a broken identity with a very small time frame, and then when it doesn't work, that gets shattered and rebuilt as something else. But each shattering and rebuilding is the rebuilding of something that's not quite an identity and sort of merely imitates one.
Yeah, foundations on sand.
No wonder when you put it in that kind of context that we fell through the leagues as we did, because we're constantly rebuilding each time. We're leaving ourselves with less resources. Suddenly there we are in League One. So I think that comes back to the point about giving the managers more time. Ultimately, I look at Ross's record. You know when you look at that little graphic on Google about with League One, you can see the form next to the thing with the little like red and green dots. Yeah. Well, I was looking at that this morning, and I find it quite baffling when you see the 4 wins and a loss, and you think that's the record of a manager whose job is allegedly under some dispute. I don't see it. I mean, yes, you're not going. I mean, okay, we're not blowing away teams week in, week out. We're having weeks where we outclass some teams, where we edge some, and then you get the odd draw and the odd loss. But ultimately, if we have 30 minutes where we're clinical, followed by 60 minutes where we're, decent to average by our standards, that's all right, surely.
If you look at this recent form, though, one of the criticism that often gets levelled at Jack Ross is he's stubborn, he's unwilling to change, he's dour, he's boring, this, that and the other. The change of form coincides with him actually going out of his comfort zone and adapting into this. Again, okay, it's a pretty, 4-4-2. It's normal, isn't it? It's a default system. But not many teams play that. Now, we've set up at the beginning of the season to play one particular way. He's identified that it hasn't worked, and he's reverted to type, and bang, we're in form now. We've lost one game. Okay, yeah, it was a bad one. The reality of that game was, we were in it until that free kick. But he's doing a pretty good job.
I'm hoping, given the fact that we've sort of resumed beating the poorer teams of the league comfortably, all things considered, I'm going to assume that game was a bad day at the office and not some indication of anything horrendous, because we were in the game at Peterborough until that free kick. And, we did crumble, but we crumbled in a very sort of frustrating way it's not, like a common feature of this Sunderland team. It was a staple of the teams from seasons before, but this is a team with a much more substantial character, so we don't see that as much with them. But anyway, what I think will be a good time to move on to, we put on Twitter yesterday, or rather Craig did, as we're back in the studio today, we asked for any points or questions that you'd like to discuss. So I figured while Grigg was the most recent topic that was relevant to this particular game, Jay Hart says, will Grigg, do we cut our losses and sell him or persevere? So we'll go back to you for this one, Richard. Now, again, if you're from the outside looking in to the Sunderland sort of fan social sphere, what do you think was the most rational course of action?
I would certainly persevere. For a start, there's no way. I don't think you'd get your money back. I don't think many clubs would spend $3 million on Will Grigg. I think when he signed, he even joked himself, didn't he, that blimey, they played how much for me? He might not have said blimey. Look, Will Grigg's got an excellent pedigree, so there's no doubt that he can score goals at this level. Hasn't worked out for him so far. I think there's been signs this season that he hopefully may have turned a corner, certainly in terms of his performances. As I say, I think, to be fair to him, at the minute he's having to scratch around for 10, 15, 20 minutes here and there. I've already made the point that I wouldn't necessarily start with him at the minute, and I would stand by that. I certainly think he can score goals in this team. I mean, the way they're playing in an open 4-4-2, then they create chances. So if he was to start a game, then you would bet at some point he would get a goal scoring run, and he's quite a useful weapon, hopefully, to have coming off the bench. That said, it's got to come from him as well. You know what I mean? He should be scoring chances like that yesterday. So yeah, I would certainly persevere. I wouldn't sell him. I mean, don't get us wrong, if somebody came in with a £3 million offer, then the club might consider it. But I would highly doubt that at the minute, or in January.
I think even if he is still to come off the bench for, say, 20 to 30 minutes every game, a player like Will Grigg should still see, and especially in games where we're comfortably better than our opposition in terms of just baseline quality, we should be. He should be getting at least one, for him, clear-cut chance a game, which he did against Accrington. And I think, as me and you definitely agreed on at the very least, which, I do feel like he spurned. I feel that it could have been put somewhere better than Everton. I know, as you said as well, Craig, that, he's probably thinking that, I can't go inside the bloke's mind, but he put a similar ball between Evertomov's legs last season and perhaps went for the same option again.
Just looks rusty though, doesn't he?
It does look rusty, it does.
But that should hopefully sort itself out with game time. Tuesday is a massive game for us. So in terms of the argument, should he start, shouldn't he? He won't. You look at the game next week and you think, realistically, there is a lot of teams putting 4s, 5s, 6s past Bolton. So if that's a game where you want to strike it to get bang smack in form, maybe go 2 or 3-0 up. Getting ahead of myself. Non-Sunderland will get beat 1-0. But let's, maybe try and get something in the foundations down there. But look, we're not going to get our money back. It's an enormous fee. If somebody offered us our money back, then I assume everybody would take it.
If someone gave me now $3 million for him back, I would take it, purely because I think we overspent. Quite substantially we overspent. But I feel like you live and you learn. If we're going by bad financial decisions, that for me is the biggest sore thumb. I feel like on the whole we've been pretty sound with managing of transfer funds. We've been quite savvy in places. I think that's the only example of maybe burning a large amount of money. But if it's one rather than 75% of your signings, as it's often been, then I don't have too many qualms. But obviously, the whole thing feels like a cock up for me.
You're going to get injuries and suspensions, aren't you? So at some point he will get a chance to start. As I say, it's going to be down to him to take it, because obviously Charlie Wake's back for Tuesday, isn't he? Just the 1 game suspension, so a bit more competition for Grigg there. But
I think what will prove an interesting point in respect of this deal, because we can all certainly agree that it was extortionate what we eventually paid. We went back with deal after deal, is watching that unfold on the documentary, because Stuart routinely mentions when he comes on this pod, make sure that you watch when season 2 comes out about the January transfer deadline day. So it'll be interesting to see how that materialised. Were they sat panicking? Were they determined to ensure that basically they finished the day with him, or what's happened? Because someone has basically signed off on this, and I think they all said Jack Ross had gone home. He was happy with Kaz Sterling, wasn't he, through the door? So I think this one, again, it's a criticism that often gets thrown at Ross for spending that money, but I think this was the chairman's deal.
And I think either way you look at it there, I mean, on the one hand, at the time, I thought it was a very sensible, it was a very sensible and very noble cause to chase Grigg and get him over the line, because when you look at it from the outset, if Ross is thinking, right, I've signed a 17-year-old on loan who's played, 11 minutes of professional football there and then, that's not great.
That would have been very underwhelming, wouldn't it? It wouldn't have gone down well.
If he's satisfied with that as transfer business, then I have to wonder, how much of this footballer have you seen, given how little time he's played at a professional level? We're talking 11 minutes here. I mean, I don't know. At the time, Grigg seemed like it seemed like a coup. At the time, I thought great. This is really good ambition. I'm really happy that Donald and Methvin and Co have chased.
I was
Grigg
pleased
down
when David Moyes was appointed.
Hindsight's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
So was I. I remember thinking, I'm so glad we've acted swiftly to get someone as good as Sam Allardyce. And here we are now in League One. So thanks, Davey. Thanks for everything. Anyway, so I suppose to maybe just summarise an answer for Jay, if I was to answer this myself, I would say persevere for now, but 2 or 3 more Accrington-esque misses when he gets a chance. And then I would try and cut my losses if I could by January, but only time will tell, and whatever transpires next is anyone's guess.
Just keep supporting him. I was pleased yesterday there when he came on. There has been a few occasions where there's been a few kind of laughs and murmurs and things like that, but I thought the support yesterday was largely excellent. There was nobody criticising him, certainly around where I was sat when his chance came straight off the keeper. But look, just make sure that we stay behind him. if we get on his back, then it's just going to go sour very, very quickly for him. He's going to hide. And I think he is that type of player where he really needs, someone to hold his hand without, kind of being nasty to him or anything like that. But you've seen when we've won a game and he hasn't really contributed massively, he's one of the first off the pitch, which is a shame. Sometimes he does not look part of the team. So I think it's important that we make sure that, at least for the foreseeable, any sort of criticisms that we have, just try and keep at it and try and keep behind him.
The fans got right behind White, didn't they?
Yes, and it changed.
That's what changed. I mean, he was missing sitter after sitter, and then suddenly we started singing Charlie, Charlie White, and he just got progressively better. And I mean, it shows you it can work.
I think as a fan base on a whole, I think we did very, very well there.
We turned Charlie White round. I firmly believe that.
Yeah, we didn't let him just sort of like out the door his way into a poor tenure.
Could have very easily happened with his injuries and his misses.
Absolutely, it could have, but thankfully that wasn't the case. Anyway, our next question is relevant to another attacking player, one that we've not covered yet, from Jake Collinson, which is it time to finally cut our losses with Watmore and release him? I'm going to go straight back to you, Sam.
I think it is, personally. I mean, I know that does sound harsh. It's not his fault. I mean, I like Watmore. He seems like I know he's a very intelligent lad, and I know he's stuck with Sunderland, and it's unfortunate what's happened to him, but I just think the weight is he's on, and I mean, it's just every week now. It's sort of, he's out for another 3 weeks, and I'm thinking he hasn't been here. He's been out 3 weeks before that. What's happened? And I just think it's got to the point where it is time to cut the losses, because even when he's in the team, I do like him. And I get that he offers something different, but I don't see him adding too much. I mean, he wouldn't get in my starting 11 if everyone's fit. I don't know if he even really challenges that much for the starting 11s, but I do feel sorry for Watmore, and I do like him.
Yeah, I think it's a tenure that's been marred by a very unfortunately poor injury record. I mean, this is the same Duncan Watmore, remember, who looked absolutely class when beating Norwich 3-0 to essentially stay up with Allardyce back at the helm, and we'll get on to him in a bit actually, because there were a few more questions pertaining to him in a recent article that got out. But for now, we'll stay on Watmore. You look back to then and I think, right, this is a lad who could definitely make it for a Premier League Sunderland. And you have to, and now we're looking at a League One team that he can't get into. Yeah. And I put that mainly down to a lot of momentum lost to injury, and obviously his main outlet was pace, and given the leg injuries he's had to suffer, then likely that's his wings clipped for me. And it's a very sort of, it's almost, if you want to be romantic, quite a tragic thing to see really, but I just think it's not going to work from, I don't know, what do you think, Grigg?
Nail on the head, to be honest. I think it is. It's very kind of sad to see any particular player go through that. It's a short career, and the reality is he's 25 now, and he's had no career, has he? Not really. He's only had a handful of kind of games here and there for us. When he came back in the Championship, everybody had heralded him as basically the rescue act, if you like. I remember when he came on against Preston, he got absolutely clattered by the goalkeeper down there, and everyone was panicking and was concerned, thinking, Christ, he's going to be out injured. And then lo and behold, when he's had his long injury again, and then he comes back and you think, right, has he lost his key attribute, which, as you mentioned, it was pace. He looked okay in pre-season, nothing too spectacular, but it's now these small injuries mounting up, and it's so much time lost. Nick Barnes, I overheard the podcast with BBC quite recently, and a good point that he mentioned was, look, if this is 3 weeks, we're already in the middle of September. So that's 3 weeks before he can come back and be in contention. He then needs to get match fitness, which he's had nothing of. We're already looking at Christmas. Yeah. And that's pretty much half of your season gone. He's in the last year of his deal. Would I cut ties? Certainly. Yeah, absolutely. The reality is, I think, he is a clever lad, and I certainly wouldn't hold it against him in any way. But I don't personally think he would, kind of leave right now, effective immediate, without a payoff. And look, he's contracted, so he's right to do so. But I don't think he has a future in football after this season. I don't think anybody will take a chance, and if they do, it'll be on a very, very small amount of money. Is it sustainable for us to continue paying a reported £20,000 there or thereabouts for a person who's not going to kick a ball? Not at all. I mean, if we manage to get him off the books in the summer, then there's a possibility that you keep hold of another one of the players. I'll stand more of a chance to invest that money elsewhere. But no, I don't think he has any future here, and I think it'll be a sad way to go out for a Sunderland career. But I think he'll feature barely minimal between now and the end of the season, and I expect him to be the first name on the release list at the end of the season.
I think that couldn't be more of a likely. That's probably that has to be the likeliest prediction of how Watmore's sort of Sunderland career will likely end.
Yeah, I mean, he seems a nice lad, and he's a very, very intelligent kid, and as you've seen, he comes from a really good family. His dad, Ian, is often speaking to us and providing us with continuous updates about how he's going. Some of the comments perhaps recently has been somewhat unfair, and you see things online about saying, should he just literally go and quit because he's not contributing? The reality is he's got a contract, he's got an employment contract, and we have to make sure that if there was to be any sort of behaviour like that we have to follow the appropriate channels, because look, the last thing we want is any sort of lawsuits and things like that.
I mean, Christ, the Alvarez fiasco has been dragged out over about 5 years now.
So for me personally, like I said, look, I'd like to see him, back banging form, but I think too much time has gone by, and who knows? I mean, David Mailer cut his career short the other day, retiring at the age of 30, and he had similar injuries and he was out for long sustained periods. But afterwards, he played quite regular for teams. Duncan Watmore hasn't had any of this at all. He's barely played any football, and he's 25.
The sad fact is that we can't afford to accommodate him in the hopes that he might get momentum.
Not a chance.
It comes back to the old saying that, sadly, I mean, normally it's said in quite a more negative light than this, but no player is bigger than the team, and we can't afford to accommodate Watmore, who's on a 20k a week contract, in the hopes that he might rekindle his career. If we could, I would love us to, but the fact of the matter is that we, like many, many, many other teams, just cannot do that. So that's a yes for me as well to the W release him. We'll go to you, Richard, as a final verdict on this panel.
It's you talk about Will Grigg, and fans being desperate to see him do well for Sunderland, and I think Duncan Watmore would certainly fall into that category. The reality is, as you've kind of outlined, he's never really strung together a run of games for the club since breaking through as a result of the two really serious injuries. He's a top professional and he's a really nice lad, so you're not going to ever get any issues from Duncan Watmore, and he will give us all for the club. That said, I'd be amazed if he got a new contract next summer. I'm pretty sure he'll see the season out with Sunderland. He could be a really useful weapon for Sunderland, kind of off the bench in sort of key tight games. But as you said, it's these niggly little injuries that he's now picking up. 2 weeks here, 3 weeks there. Hugely frustrating for him. Hugely frustrating for Jack Ross. And Jack Ross has also touched upon and not just the physical, but the mental side of things. Mm-hmm. Like you said on more than one occasion, it's also just getting Duncan mentally right. Given the amount of injury problems he's had, it's always going to be playing on his mind every training session he plays, presumably. He seems a strong-willed kind of guy. But in answer to your question, I suspect this will be his last for Sunderland. I'd be amazed if he got a new contract. I think the club will stick with him for the duration of the season. I think he probably would get another club somewhere. I think somebody will take a chance on him, and it may well be that a clean break from Sunderland would do him good as well. I mean, looking back, his time would be associated with injury, wouldn't it? Obviously with Sunderland, so you never know. A fresh start somewhere, he might be able to string together a run of games, and then your body and your physical and mental health would kind of build from there, and he might go on to still have a half decent career. But it's just a crying shame the amount of injuries he's picked up. And as you say, Sunderland are now in a financial position where they cannot carry players of that wage anymore at this level. And ultimately, that's probably what it's going to come down to.
I'd like to think that maybe if the wind blew the right way for him once he left Sunderland, as we imagine will be the case, that say he gets a better sort of string of luck with injuries. Let's say he stays sort of fresh from anything severe for the next couple of years. I would love that to be the case. I think if we're going to marry up optimism and realism, I would like him to leave here and then to possibly rebuild with the club, maybe lower down and maybe work his way back up. You never know. I mean, we've seen Johnny Williams do it now.
Yeah,
I never imagined that would happen.
It's not a case of the Jack Rodwells, is it? I mean, this is a lad who is desperate to succeed, and he's not one of those, every single Saturday who could be sat at home. You see that an awful lot when players aren't involved. They'll not be at the stadium. They might not travel to away games. He's in the fan zone. He's doing all the ambassadorial jobs that you would expect. He's taking pictures with kids. He's meeting families. He does all the right things, which again is that tragic shame. So touching on what Richard said, look, it would be absolutely fantastic to see him have that clean slate, go to a team further down, whether it's in League Two or anyone like that. teams like Salford, who are new money, if you like, could potentially look to take a punt on him, and it would be really good. It'd be refreshing to see, and I don't think anybody would hold any disdain or grudges towards him. But we can only hope and pray between now and the end of the season that he does come back in some sort of fighting form, and hopefully at least leaves a decent mark on a Sunderland legacy. Because at the moment he's just renowned, isn't he? He was that player who was never fit, and we've done it to death. But yeah, look, let's just hope we can get something between now and May from him. That
Wycombe game kind of just summed up his Sunderland career, didn't it? I mean, it was a brilliant finish. Showed a lot of bravery, I guess, to get there, and it was a brilliant equaliser. And then within 5-10 minutes or so, he was down injured again, and then out for another spell. So
he was up against the worst team in the league for getting a potential injury, because I mean obviously I know Ainsworth's team are doing a lot better this season, but they were just
thugs.
They were absolute thugs last season. You just normally are making allowance that teams will often try more unconventional tactics to get through a game, but you draw a line somewhere, and I drew it there I drew that across the ground of Adams Park, metaphorically speaking, when I saw them. But anyhow, the bottom line is that we all know Watmore cares about the club. We all know that he's a great ambassador for the club, and wherever he may be, likely not here. I just we always want the lad to do well. Bottom line. But anyhow, moving on.
He'll probably score against Sunderland if he.
He absolutely will.
Massive game as well. Yeah.
He wouldn't celebrate though. He wouldn't.
Wembley or something. Playoff final.
Yeah, it'll be the League One playoff final in 2022. It'll be great. Jesus. We'll be up against throws name at Map of UK, Grimsby, and he scores and they win 2-1. Something like that. I don't know. Let's move on to. We've got probably time for one more question pertaining to a particular player from the list of Q&As that you guys asked us for. And that is from Gav. Are any of the panel concerned by John McLaughlin's form? He's been suspect on a number of occasions regarding goals conceded and hasn't kept a clean sheet yet this season. Or has he got enough change in the bank to spare himself / allow him to regain form? What do we think of that? We'll go back to you, Craig.
He's been suspect for a couple of the goals. Ipswich one maybe should have done better. I'm not sure if the issue of the contract hanging over his head at the moment, there's maybe a little bit of uncertainty about his future here. Because again, he is into the final stages now of his contract, coming up at the end of the season. But again, I think the pros certainly outweigh the negatives. I think, although yesterday, he conceded. I don't think he really could have done too much with the goal. It literally happened that quick. But I think when he was called into action, although not a great deal, he'd done exactly what was required of him. He made a pretty decent save in the second half. And there's a lot of other incidents throughout the course of the season so far that I can think of that he has made crucial saves. But again, I think that comes with the territory at the moment. He's a League One goalkeeper. He's a very good League One goalkeeper, but you're always prone to errors, you're prone to mistakes. But look, if he continues and maybe makes a few clangers, we've got somebody who's prepared to push him in Lee Burge, and I think he's done pretty okay so far in the cup games. But I'm not concerned. No, not at the moment. I think, especially from what we've seen of him last season, with his capabilities, hopefully we can get this contract situation sorted as soon as possible. But in terms of where we are now, we're more open, so we're more vulnerable at the back. And look, you're only as good as the defence in front of you, really, and they've been pretty suspect at times too this season. So no, I'm not concerned. When I look at McLaughlin's season so far, I see a season that's definitely not as good as last season. Not so far.
No, not so far. Of course, but you have to remember, in the game against Rochdale, against a team that we were quite neck and neck with, really. When we got to the latter 10 minutes of that game, he made some absolutely crucial saves to keep us in it. And ultimately, a goalkeeper is a member of your team, just as a striker, a defender, or a midfielder is. And as such, they are expected to, at some point, potentially win you the game. I would argue that he did in that game. I would argue that his contributions were of the more significant. And he'll do that again this season, should he stay in net. But let's say, for example, Sam, that Ross just drops McLaughlin straight up for the next game and he sticks Burge in goal. How okay with that are you? How okay are you with Lee Burge potentially taking over if he was to?
I think I'd be comfortable with Burge because I was at Burnley and he made a few good saves at Burnley, and I think he really made a claim for himself to be a solid second choice keeper if called upon. I don't think McLaughlin should be dropped at all. I think it would be a weird statement to make by Ross, to be honest.
Awful adverse reaction, I think, on him, wouldn't it?
Yeah. But just hypothetically speaking, of course, I mean, I don't think Ross would ever drop him going into the Rotherham game, nor do I think it's the right thing to do by any means, given that McLaughlin hasn't really done anything, horrendous to justify that. But it's mainly just how do you feel about Lee Burge, really?
I was going to say, in respect of that, maybe rephrasing it and say, how comfortable would you have been to play, say, the Burton game last week, for example, with Lee Burge? Because last season,
I think we should have. Yeah.
We called off so many games, and that really crept us back in. And the reality is, look, I think Conor McLaughlin was also called up last week, Flanagan as well. They barely feature. So if you look at yesterday's team, how confident and comfortable would you be with basically Lee Burge in that goal? Is maybe as a one-off and play through the international breaks, because I think we'd do okay.
I think it would have been good for him as well to be able to come in, because McLaughlin's on international duty, Burge to come in and just put in a good performance. I think it would have been just the best for everyone, to be honest, because I mean Flanagan and McLaughlin wouldn't have been missed if Hume was fit, because you would have had Hume and O'Nien and Willis and Ozturk, so it would have only been Burge coming in for McLaughlin, which I think would have been fine by me, to be honest.
I would quite like to see Burge in the league, to be honest. I know, obviously, I wouldn't want that at the expense of McLaughlin, but if we were to have that scenario that you've just, let's say, paused there, I think that would have worked pretty well. I would have liked us to have gone straight back into a game rather than have the fortnight of having a 3-0 loss lingering on the players' minds and leaving a bad taste in our mouths. But when I've seen Burge play, I've seen nothing wrong at all, and I've only really got good things to report. He played in the 3-1 win against Burnley. He's featured in the biggest ever win League One Sunderland has seen in terms of the prestige of the opponent, which is nice. I've not got anything. I've never looked at him and thought, this guy is a lot worse than McLaughlin. I've had nothing like that. I know the Coventry fans don't rate him that highly, but then again, the Bury fans didn't rate Chris Maguire that highly. So you can never take an opponent's testimony to be, the absolute word of law for the player. I'm not particularly worried that, let's say McLaughlin does have a few bad games and he does drop some clangers. Knowing that we've got a player like Burge to go into, I wouldn't be that worried even in the worst case scenario. So I'm kind of all right with that.
I think Burton had the international call-ups as well, didn't they?
Yeah, they had 3 as well.
Yeah, so it would have been called off.
It was always
anyway.
getting called off.
Yeah, but I think Jack Ross has made the point a couple of times that he doesn't want to call games off if he can help it, because you'd rather try and have points on the board rather than like last season we saw they were chasing the tail, weren't they, for the last
I think we've got another one in October, is that right? Another international break?
October and November,
And we've already got 7 games, I think, scheduled in November. So
so potentially you could have October and November with a break. So hopefully that wouldn't happen. I'd be amazed if he dropped John McLaughlin personally. Yeah, there's been issues over potentially a couple of the goals. Contract thing is an issue. Of course it is. He spoke quite openly, didn't he, about it? About 2 or 3 weeks back, when he said that he basically hadn't received an offer yet from the club, so you can't sign what isn't there. There's obviously more pressing matters with the takeover, etc. And I think the transfer window was obviously slow open at the time as well. So tying him down for me to a contract new deal is absolutely key. I'd be amazed if you dropped him. Ross is obviously a huge fan. I mean, a month or so back, he was calling him the best goalkeeper in League One, wasn't he? And with regards to Lee Burge, he looks a pretty solid signing. Haven't seen too much of him myself. He'll certainly play the leasing.com games, won't he? And you would think he would be a fine choice if there are international call-ups for McLaughlin. I wouldn't have any issue with him playing the odd game, but yeah, for me, I would certainly stick with Big John for now.
This is an entirely separate point, but naming the leasing.com their trophy, Richard, you've brought up in my mind, and now I've got to say it, otherwise it's going to sit on my mind for the rest of the podcast. But, the name Checker Trade Trophy, because it had that, consonants and that alliteration, it didn't sound very tin pot. I don't know if that's just me, but, it sounded like a very dignified trophy. Just by name, obviously the whole youth teams thing totally, renders it a joke, in my opinion. But Checker Trade Trophy sounds quite good.
Rolls off the tongue.
Leasing.com Trophy sounds like it's not tin pot.
Just sounds like an internal insurance 5% competition.
That's it. Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
I would try and get out of it as quickly as possible.
Shall we just call it the EFL trophy for future's sake? But we should definitely get out of it as soon as we can.
Play as stronger team as you have to, but if they're out after 3 games, then who cares? Who cares?
Hey,
getting up's the priority.
Wembley was nice.
But you've been lost at Wembley in a crap trophy, though. At least losing in a playoff final is a playoff final.
We don't want to go to Wembley. Not this season.
I don't want to go back for at least another
ever.
At least
like a decent
ever.
cup final anyway.
Champions League or something.
That
would be nice.
Put me back in for the League Cup or for the FA Cup,
like a concert or something.
Yeah, or a concert. Yeah. Can I go and see Take That? Not really.
Your choice. Yeah. No judgment.
Yeah, I'll take my mum. We'll go see Take That. Rather that than watch Sunderland lose again. weird little sort of segue, but I just had to say it because leasing.com trophy sounds like what's like a more feeble metal than tin?
I think you just wanted to talk about Tate that.
Maybe I did. Maybe this was an elaborate way of
a
me
nice
confessing
segue,
my love
wasn't
to
it?
take that.
Very
Yeah.
niche.
Well, it is what it is.
Yeah,
At the
there
end
we
of the
go.
day.
No judgment.
It's actually just a really clever masquerade for my love for the Lighthouse family, but by putting on a take that, it takes it away from that. Oh, that was like a little...
Next point.
Yeah, next point. Anyway, the pros and cons feature. That was something else that we have ran that is different from the quick question and 3-word review. So, as I said earlier, I'm taking the credit. That was you, wasn't it?
Nope. Gav.
Okay, well, I think it was Gav, but, Gav's not here, so we're going to take the credit.
I did it.
Yeah, Craig did it, and not Gav. Craig did it, and it basically... Gav/Craig put on Twitter for the pros and cons and asked us to give us 3 of each from the aforementioned game, the Accrington game. So let's have a little look at those. We'll read out a few and then we'll discuss. We'll see what we agree with. We'll see what we disagree with. So first of all, Kingy78 says the pros were Hume looks settled. Dobson runs without dragging a tugboat about like Power and Leadbitter. It was a comfortable away win, and the cons were yet another game without a clean sheet. Final ball poor, especially second half. Should have scored more. And sat deep as always, second half, letting them cause problems. So we'll go to you, Sam. What do you think? How in agreement are you with those pros and cons?
I agree with Hume. It is nice to see Hume settling, and he looks a bit confident, to be honest, going forward. I mean, it was...
That cross was a killer.
That's what you want from... In that position, you just want to fire it in, don't you? None of this hanging the ball up in the air, because League One defenders, that's meat and drink for them, but... No, it was hard for Hume at the start of the season. It was hard to see a bit. It wasn't nice fans turning. I mean, he'd only played, 10 or 12 games before that, but it's nice to see him settled, so I agree with that. Positive. What was the other positives?
The others were Dobson runs without dragging tugboat like Power and Leadbitter.
I would agree.
I'd agree for Leadbitter, but I think Power's a bit more mobile.
I think it was nice to see Ross change it up because he's went with either the pairing of Power and Leadbitter or Dobson and McGeoch, and people have been crying out for one of the more slower experienced players to play with Dobson. So you've got Leadbitter, who people want him to just do the basics, calm everything down, and then you've got Dobson with the energy, and I think it worked, to be honest. He's never had a bad game when I've seen him, Dobson. I mean, he provides the energy, which is great, which is what people were shouting for last season with 09 in the middle, so Dobson's got that covered. I would like to see McGeoch play, but no, I'd agree with that. I'd agree.
Yeah. What about you, Craig?
The Dobson point is certainly bang on, yeah. Especially for the way that the third goal came about yesterday. Really, really good interception. He's just always got his head up, hasn't he? And I know we haven't seen an awful lot of him so far, but from what we have seen, it's been largely positive. He hasn't looked out of his depth. Bear in mind he's come from a team who's, again, just got relegated. But yeah, I think he had something different. And in respect of, obviously, say, Leadbitter, one of the points that often gets put forward is, look, he can't play away from home. We should never have him involved in away games, things like that. Whether you agree or disagree is another matter. But it was decent to see yesterday that if you have someone like George Dobson involved, he's going to be doing the legwork for someone like Leadbitter, or whether it's Power, and they can sit back and maybe mop up and spray these Hollywood balls around. But yeah, I thought he was really good yesterday, and it'll be interesting to see going forward now for at least the next few games, especially with everybody fit. I agree with Sam. I like Dylan McGeoch. I really like Dylan McGeoch. Now, the unfortunate thing with him is obviously he never ever seems to get the cut of the green. So it'd be good to see him get a run alongside George Dobson, because I feel like McGeoch is, he's the younger Leadbitter, if you like. He's the younger Cattermole.
He was signed to be the younger Cattermole, but almost counterintuitively, now that Leadbitter is the new Cattermole, he isn't the new Leadbitter anymore when he was meant to be the new Cattermole in the first place.
But it'd be nice to see them involved together at some stage, and I think they will. They'll definitely get the chance. Look, we've easily got another 50 games left over the course of cup competitions and who knows what else. But
our magical John in the Leasing.com trophy, of course.
God. But yeah, I thought George Dobson yesterday, I thought he done really well. And again, it's going to be difficult for maybe Max Power to try and get back in for Tuesday night. Whether Jack Ross has got the confidence in him now against Rotherham, who is going to be a much tougher test. Whether he'll still give that license to Dobson to say, look, go prove what you can do. It'll be interesting. We'll see. Yeah, pretty much agree with the pros. Then for Hume in particular, again, yeah, he was wrote off, wasn't he? We discussed that on the first pod. He got boos, he got jeers. There was a lot of comments online. He's just a young lad. He's barely played any football. But look, lo and behold, he's now settled. He's not playing in a formation that where nobody really knew what they were doing, if you like. But yeah, he's calm, he's composed. Superb delivery for that first goal. And the longer he gets in that team, this new fella, the Bok, he may prove adequate cover, but that position's Denver Humes.
It is to defend as it stands.
Yeah.
That cross being the perfect sort of justification for it. And I think, as was said there, coming back to that, playing those long balls over the top, it is. I don't remember whether it was you or Sam who said it, but Sam, yeah. So, that is the meat and drink of the average.
When you clip it up in the air, they're just going to header it away for fun, aren't they?
The average big no nonsense lump playing centre back for insert League One club's name here. That's just what they do. And I think as well we need to we just need to keep it basic with stuff like that, but also just with a bit more directness, just bombing down to the byline and then sort of like drilling in, something like that, only for a play like Lyndon Gooch to just sort of like use its momentum to swing it in. Yeah. That's what you want. You want a more direct style of play. All of this overlap and then, hitting it over, it's just... It's a consequence of what Jack Ross saw earlier this season, where he just tried to overcomplicate things. Now that we're playing 4-4-2 and we're just playing more direct football, we're doing a lot better.
Yeah, exactly.
The 5-3-2 with all of these sort of like tactical ins and outs is just it was a blueprint that we didn't have the resources to.
It's overly
to
ambitious for the team he's got, isn't it? And that is something that we may, who knows, next season if we are fortunate enough to get promoted and we do bring in different players, it's a system we may adapt to. But at least for the moment, that 4-4-2, it's settled, it's working. Yeah, okay, we've lost one in 5-6 now, but we're doing very well. And the good thing is that we've got adequate competition now across the board.
I would maybe like to see him or him or whatever manager would be at the helm when we are, touchwood, challenging for the championship, perhaps revisiting a style of play like that. But obviously what I'm essentially saying there is, when we're a whole division better than what we are, I would like us to then try something like that.
Yeah.
But given what we currently have at our disposal, I think it was a fairly shambolic idea. But thankfully, it's one that he seems to have learned from. So I can take nothing away from him to that.
Yeah,
end.
exactly.
Would have all liked him to get it right the first time, but hey ho. Anyway, moving on, we have Guy Incognito, whose pros were "We won," Gooch goal, and Maguire is as important as McGeady, and he was class. The cons are Will Grigg gave them far too many chances, and the third is we spent £4 million on Will Grigg. So anyway.
We've done the Will Grigg one, have we? We'll leave that alone.
I don't think they did have too many chances.
No, I don't.
There was a few from set pieces.
They didn't create much.
Nothing in open play. I thought Sunderland just saw the game out really well, to be fair to them. And I think they deserve a bit of credit for that.
You could argue they were maybe a bit polite, as we so often are sometimes with teams, and we gave them a bit too much, but ultimately they did nothing with it.
Look, on the flip side, if a team like Accrington playing against us, we know this formation is going to leave us slightly open. So we did, at that stage, more or less shut up shop. But, there's still 45 minutes for the other team to participate. And I think people often forget about that. They're going to see, spells of the ball. But I thought yesterday, exclude the goal, and obviously when they hit the crossbar, we were largely untroubled. I think, as mentioned, a couple of set pieces that came into the box, thought was dealt with well. I thought, again, touching on a positive, John McLaughlin was okay with them. We weren't bothered, were we? I think even when we went 1-0 down, there was a few bedwetters, if you like, who started to panic somewhat. But I don't think it was ever in doubt yesterday that we were going to win that game.
Well, it was like the Wimbledon game, wasn't it? We went 1-0 down and I'm like, but this team's crap. Like, we are going to win this game.
Yeah, we are so much better than them. Give us a chance and we will score. That's no disrespect to Accrington and Stanley, but just touching on the points about, say, having Maguire, McGeady, McNulty. If you've got that in your team, look, give them the ball, they're going to score. So, I disagree in respect of them having chance after chance. But look, we won. Let's try and at least draw some positives from it.
On our last 3 visits to the WAM Stadium now, we've scored 9 goals. I mean, that's pretty good, really, isn't it?
It suits Sunderland the way Accrington play, I think, because Accrington, to be fair, they try and get it down and play a little bit, and Sunderland tend to create more chances against those teams.
But their new pitch helps us as well.
It does, doesn't it? One of the criticisms that has often been, again, levelled at the players, at the management, whoever, if you like, is that we would always come out and sit back and defend and maybe wait to go 1-0 down, or if we scored first, then we're sitting back and waiting for them to equalise. Now, there may be games like that going forward for the rest of the season, but the reality is over the course of at least the past month or so, since this change of formation, we're averaging 2 and 3 goals a game now. So, look, if we're going to score 3 goals and just concede the 1, it's winning games. The clean sheet thing, he's made a bit of a rod for his own back by saying we need to have 20. This time last season, we only had 1. So we're not too far off where we were then. And again, this time last season, we were there or thereabouts, near the top of the league, where we are now. Win that game in hand against Burton, if we played that, we'd be top of the league. So I don't think it's as bad as some people are making out. I think, as Richard's mentioned, that a lot of praise really needs to be given to Sunderland yesterday. We've went away from home and scored 3. I know people are somewhat upset that we haven't rattled them just because Peterborough scored 6 or because Rotherham scored 6, but they're not going to do that every week.
Absolutely not. No, I certainly don't think they will. But what I quite liked about this guy's pros here was the number 3, which was Maguire is as important as McGeady, and he was class. Now, is that something that we think is particular to this one game, or is Maguire always as important as McGeady? We'll go back to you, Richard. From what you have seen of Sunderland, how would you hold those two players in regard?
No, I think McGeady's class above anyone in this league, and he's probably a class above anyone in the squad, I would say. No, McGeady's a class act. Maguire, I think he's excellent on his day. I think there are still times when he's a little bit frustrating and inconsistent, is probably a bit too strong, but doesn't always bring it, which is, again, a point Jack Ross has levelled at him a couple of times. But yeah, Maguire, excuse me, in this Sunderland side is a really good player.
McGeady.
Maguire is a really
sorry.
good player, in this Sunderland side, and he did well for the goal for McNulty. He just waited, didn't he, and teed it up really nicely. But in terms of comparing the two of them, I think McGeady's a class above. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. See, if I'm going to play devil's advocate, though, what you say about Maguire being inconsistent, I would never call McGeady a consistent player. I mean, yes, the quality is there, but he has had frustrating games for us.
Yeah.
There have been games where we've expected a masterclass from him, given what we're playing, and we don't get it. I mean, obviously, there are games where his finishes make all the difference, and you do look at him and think, yes, this is a player who, by League One standards, is an absolute masterclass. I would probably, if my hand was forced, I would say, yes, he is better than Maguire overall. But ultimately, there are a lot of comparisons between the two that suggest otherwise. I mean, we look at McGeady yesterday, and yes, his finish was class. But that finish that he got is a finish that you would never see happen in any division higher than the one we're in.
Yeah.
When you see the ball go into him, it's an absolute pedestrian ball in the middle. The Accrington's number 8, I don't know what on earth he's doing, but he just does not get rid of it. He lets it just go into the path of McGeady, someone he should be very mindful of where he is, given that he's a mere 8 yards away from him. And obviously McGeady picks it up, and yes, he can put it away like it's nothing, but in any other division, he doesn't get that chance. So sometimes I do wonder, does McGeady look good in a class above, or does this division make itself look a class below when he plays?
I mean, at the end of the day, Sunderland are in League One, and you're playing, you know what I mean? And
you can only beat what's in front of you.
Yeah, exactly. But for McGeady, I think you would put your mortgage on a lot more coming up with a match-winning goal or assist or whatever, whereas Maguire, I don't think you would every game. As I say, I think Maguire's a really good player, and he's obviously a huge fan favourite, and I think he's done really well since he's been at Sunderland. Mm-hmm. But personally, I think McGeady is a better player than Maguire.
There is still a reason, isn't there, why he's spent the large parts of his career playing League One football.
Yeah.
And it is the consistency issue, definitely. But look, he's had an excellent start the season. But yeah,
what Maguire does do is he does keep coming back and proving. Not Jack Ross wrong, but you know what I mean? Now and again he'll drop him, and then he'll come back and he'll
prove why he was signed in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Doesn't keep his head down, does he?
Yeah.
Seems to come back stronger, which is good character to have.
Do you think he's matured a little bit this season? I mean, there was a lot of spells last season where you'd say, his behaviour was somewhat petulant, and there'd be kick-outs, and there'd just be stupid isolated incidents that you could point the finger at. There doesn't seem to be so many this time round. He seems to basically know what his role is. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's chipping in with goals and assists here, there, and everywhere, isn't he? So I think this term at least he looks a better player certainly than last season. Mm-hmm. His contribution certainly shouldn't go unnoticed, but I don't think he's at the levels of Aidan McGeady. Aidan McGeady still at this age could be playing for a team in the league above.
Yeah, I would say so. Absolutely. I mean, with Maguire as well, you have got a player where immaturity has always been quite a prevalent aspect of his game. Yeah. I mean, you got to look at that. Well, that video, like, it does the rounds every now and then of when he's playing for Oxford and he beats the keeper from a penalty spot, and then imitates how the keeper should have done it. And he's done things like that across his entire career. He's done plenty of them for us. It's
just a shit house, though, isn't he?
Because
he plays for us, we like him. I mean,
we would despise him if he played for Portsmouth. Would hate him.
Oh, you would, wouldn't you?
Would absolutely despise him.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, actually, before we wrap this one up, here's a point to show how much he's disliked by the other teams. Go on the EFL Twitter, scroll through the tweets today. It was 1 year since he scored that goal down at Burton. And obviously excellent goal. And the amount of comments from Bury fans who call him this, that and the other, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, absolutely unbelievable. So when we signed him and you seen those comments, you think, Christ almighty, what are we getting ourselves in for?
But everything, what we've got so far, I think we'd all agree we're quite happy with, really.
Yeah, very much so. Long may it continue.
Yeah. Now, and I mean, I suppose, like a final point before we do come to the close, but tin hat on with Chris Maguire. He has our best positional awareness. He has the best positional awareness and is the best finisher in our team, in my opinion. I think if I would honestly, if that's a hill to die on, I would die on it. But I do think he has the best positioning and he's the best finisher in that team. Looking at what we have based on form, based on quality.
I think it suits him being in the almost free role he's got, where he's sort of, it is 4-4-2, but he's just got license to do what he wants, really. And when you compare him to McGeady, I've always kind of wanted to see McGeady in that role. Although he does start on the left, he goes everywhere, but he's still got to track the full back, whereas Maguire's sort of, he plays the role very well. I think he does run the channels and stuff, but it suits him just, he does, the defenders don't know who should pick him up and whatnot, but I don't know if he's the best finisher. I'd still say McGeady's above him, like finishing anyway.
I've always think what made McGeady was his skill and his technique and his decisions. And I do personally think that puts him, I would say, overall as a better player than Maguire.
It's a lovely problem to have, though.
It's a lovely problem to have. Yeah, I think his finishes are all very good, but his finishes hinge on his ability and on his skill and his position, on his sort of technique, his decision making. Whereas I think for Maguire, it's a lot more just raw when you look
instinctive.
You look at him against. I mean that goal he scored against Southend, the one he scored against Portsmouth in the playoff first leg, and you just look, and that just sort of comes down to him just like either just throttling the ball into the goal or just sort of picking out his place and then putting it away. Whereas McGeady can be a lot more sophisticated on the approach if you want to sort of phrase it like that.
Who do you think will score more this season?
I think McGeady will score more this season, to be honest with you. But I think that hinges on his technique, whereas Maguire, that isn't what he has in abundance. But what he does have is more of a striker's instinct, whereas McGeady has the same from a winger's point of view. But given that McGeady's just overall a better player, he'll get more goals based purely on that. I don't know. I mean, I think it's probably is. I think the tin hat is on there, but opinions, we've all got them.
We'll see the Twitter mentions tomorrow.
We'll see. We'll scour the Twitter mentions. And if you're 1 hour and 11 minutes in, then by all means feel free to.
We're only halfway.
We're only halfway. Yeah. If you're currently at the 1/4 of the way through the podcast, as of now,
have a toilet break.
Have a toilet break. Come back. Call us some names. Keep on going. You're more than welcome to do so. I'm not particularly bothered. Anyhow, I believe we are ready to come to a close. So as one final point, just how significant are the next 2 games, Richard?
I think September is a good opportunity to build on what's been a pretty good / solid start and turn into a really good one. Rotherham obviously put 6 past, I've forgotten who they're playing. Bolton, yes.
Had to be Bolton.
Had to be Bolton, yeah. They obviously put 6 past Bolton on yesterday. So, they're in form and they're obviously going to be a decent opposition. But I think Sunderland have a good chance to build on that. And then Bolton, they should beat them on Saturday, hopefully.
Well, I was going to say, Richard, have you seen the highlights of the Rotherham Bolton game?
No, I haven't, no.
I mean, the game started out as a fairly dignified affair, but the goals were pretty shambolic as the game went on.
I think the sign was at 9 or 10 deadline day, and I think
9.
4 or 5 of them, obviously, I think we're missing 3 injury yesterday or match fitness, etc., etc. So, they're not going to be clicking or gelling yet, so Sunderland should be winning that game, he says. I think September is a good opportunity to string together those, a similar run really to August where they won 4 or 5 on the spin. Should be a big week.
But it has to start against Rotherham, doesn't it?
Yeah, for sure, yeah.
Just how important is a win against Rotherham, Sam?
I think it's vital, really. I mean, you talk about Accrington and you win 3-1 and you've still got people talking about the performance, but against teams like Rotherham, who are going to be near the top, it doesn't matter if we get battered and we win 1-0. You just need the 3 points, don't you?
2-1's the more realistic. We have to concede.
We have to concede first, I'm guessing. But No, it's all about the 3 points on Tuesday, and then it's such a strange one next Saturday against Bolton. I don't think I've ever went to an away game expecting to score 4 or 5 goals.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? We were talking about this earlier, and I mean, you can just picture it being 0-0 in the 30th minute and the party atmosphere dropping. But it's all about the first goal, and I mean, it is about the 3 points. But if you're ever going to see a convincing performance, and like you were saying, Craig, about Will Grigg, it's all got to click next Saturday, surely.
Because there's 4,000 Sunderland fans going.
Sold out.
So
we get the first goal.
Yeah.
You know, they should be.
It's all about the first goal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, absolutely. I mean, I just pray the first goal is actually ours for once. It's. I mean, obviously, I know that Rotherham came behind and got 6, and they conceded the first, but it's still not going to be fun if you're conceding against a team which are, let's be honest, you know, they've been through a lot, but that side is a poor side. You've got a haphazard assortment of you know, sort of Bosman signings. You know, a made team of 17, 18-year-olds. It's not going to. That team is going down, and it's going down sadly. You know, with a whimper, because it's just not good. It's the product of financial mismanagement. You know, to not open that can of worms. But it's not going to be a good season for them. It's at least, I think, you know, at the only consolation is that the club's still alive, which is an awful thing to say.
I guess the concern for Sunderland is that they've got 3 former Sunderland players in there.
It's going to be. Look, I mean, look. If you want to call a 1-1, you've got your pick from Bridcut, Buckley, and Murphy there, don't you? Like, geez,
they're all going to be involved, aren't they?
The thing is, we drew a little bit of criticism yesterday. Jack Ross did, and some of the team that we didn't put them to bed. So, are the pitchforks going to be out if we win 2-0 next week? Is it going to be that? I mean,
I think people will be annoyed if you don't batter them, just because your promotion rivals are battering them.
It's such a strange game.
It is, isn't it? It's a proper funny one, because I mean, look, at some point they're going to beat someone. They're going to nick a point, as they did against Coventry. Is that right? Coventry, I think, had 3 goals chalked off.
Please don't be us.
It's such a Sunderland thing to do, isn't it?
So with that in mind, even if we went and won 2-0 down there next week, I'd go, yeah, good. Because
wins a win, and just win the game.
The goals are going to dry up. That they're not going to. Surely they can't concede 5 and 6 every single week. It has to stop at some point. So providing we go down there, comfortable job again, pretty much similar to yesterday. At 3 goals, you're out of sight, no panic. We'll just go and win that game.
Yeah. I just think the ideal scenario for the next week is that you need to beat Rotherham however you beat them. I don't really care. I do think that we are going to win. I do think that we are a better side overall. I think you could win that 2-1, 2-0, 1-0. I think it'd be a fairly tight affair, but I do think we'll win. I think from there, what you need to do is you need to take the confidence you've amassed now. You need to take the more sort of support Ross has now accumulated from beating a more prestigious side than just Accrington, however you do it, and then you need to take that and you do need to batter them. Obviously, if we were to win 2-0, 1-0, 3-0, whatever, I'm not gonna turn my nose up at a win, because 3 points is 3 points. But you do want to continue this form for them of losing heavily every game, which isn't a nice thing to see from their point of view. But you know, it's a ruthless game. They're still in the league. They're still competing, and we need the goal difference.
Nobody cried for us when we fell out.
No
of the
one cried.
Championship, did they?
So nobody cried for us.
We'll have little sympathy for others.
You've got to take advantage, haven't you? I mean, especially when Ipswich beat them 5-0, we've got to look to match that, really, haven't you?
We need to go and think, right, everyone's beating them 5 or 6, let's try and beat them 7-0.
Yeah. That's
the mentality. You need to think, right, I will be basically a sacrifice for us making a statement. That's what we need. I was like, right, you've got here a very poor team that's, you know, like assembled quite chaotically and made an absolute disaster of a predicament for Bolton. But look, end of the day, we've got a mint team, and we need to be really blooding our strikers now. We need to get Maguire, McNulty, Grigg, you know, whoever. We need to get them firing. We need to just like rain down on the goal. We need to get 6 or 7.
Yeah.
I want to say that I'm looking forward to it, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, you know, you have to remember that we are still Sunderland fans here. And I remember we were in the Premier League and we were playing QPR, and they'd lost every single away game that season, and they were absolutely dire on the road. Like they hadn't scored a single goal on the road all season. I was thinking, right, you know, we've got to win this one, says 17-year-old Alex, and then, you know, lo and behold, it's 2-0. Bobby Zamora's just netted an absolute perler. And, you know, you just think, right, yeah, crap, I'm a Sunderland fan, I forgot. You know?
Don't forget, do we?
We don't forget. No, because there's so many scenarios like those that we should be aiming at least for 7-0. And I know that sounds that's a ridiculous thing to say in any context.
That said, I'd settle for 1. I'd settle for a 1-0.
genuinely.
I'll take anything.
your
I will
point.
take literally anything. So let's have a one last whip round for predictions and just before we finish off today. So we'll start with you, Richard. Again, outside looking in, can you predict for us, please, the Rotherham score and its scorers? And can you predict the same for Bolton?
Yeah, I think Rotherham will be pretty tight. I think Sunderland will win 2-1. I fancy McNulty again and McGeady. Bolton, I'm convinced they'll score first, but I think Sunderland will run out. I'm going to go 4-1. Scorers, Grigg to come on as a sub to get 1. Gooch and, I don't know, Dobson and Maguire.
Sam?
I agree with Rotherham. I think it's all about the result. I think it'll be a tight game. I'm going to go 2-1 as well. McNulty and Maguire, and then I'm just going to say 5-0 against Bolton. And McGeady, I think McGeady's got to outclass them, isn't he? 2 from him, and then Will Grigg hat-trick, why not?
You'd love to see it. Well, I'm sure he would, above all else. And finally, before me, Craig.
Likewise for Rotherham, I think we'll score first, which is overly ambitious. But I think...
You feeling all right?
I was going to say, probably not. Flash forward to next week, we'll see how we've got on. McNulty, McGeady, yeah, those are your likely goal scorers for that one. Bolton, I'm going to say 3-1, and I think it will be, again, across the board, same goal scorers as yesterday. What I do hope, in terms of, regardless of what the score is, look, even if we go out and win 3-0, 4-0, 5-0, let's not do it to death on social media and, slag them off because we haven't scored 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Let's still have everything, a bit of realism, a bit of context, and say 3 points is the most important thing. Goal difference, of course, will then take form afterwards. If we can go and smash them, brilliant, that's fine. But we just need 6 points from this week, and that will tighten up a pretty good start to the season, I would say.
For mine, I would say what I think is going to happen, and I'm going with quite an optimistic one. I think we're going to beat Rotherham, and by doing so, make a statement by keeping a clean sheet. I think we're going to win 1-0, and I think we are going to get a goal from McGeady. I think we're going to open up at some point in the game, and I think you're going to rely on McGeady's technique just to get you in where you need to be and just put one away for 1-0. I think we're going to take the confidence we've got from there into the game against Bolton, and I think we are going to cock it up ever so slightly. I think we're going to win 5-2. I think we're going to concede 2. I think we're going to concede first. I think we're going to bring up to about 2-1. They're going to draw level. I think we'll make it just a little bit awkward, but ultimately, as the game goes on, they'll disintegrate and we'll go on and we'll win 5-2. But I'm going to predict awkwardly 2-2 at half time.
Jesus Christ!
Just to make us all a little bit uneasy, and then we'll
have to get
5-2.
a pint if that's the case.
Yeah. I think our goal scorers are going to be. I think we're going to have Maguire get 2. I think Gooch is going to get 1. I think Grigg's going to get 2. I think Grigg's going to get his in the second half though. And I think that's going to be what kickstarts him and what ignites him a bit. I think he's going to get the latter 2 goals of the game that relieves us of what could be a potentially awful result. But I think while the scoreline will flatter us in the end, we will just make it a little bit awkward to begin with, and because I just think that's the Sunderland way. Thank you very much, Craig, for joining us.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Sam.
Thanks for having us.
And thank you very much for coming back, Richard.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much for listening once again. And here is to 6 points by this time next week.
Yeah.
For those listeners, if it is 2-2 at half time, bear in mind I do the commentary of the games. Please don't give me abuse. Just reporting on what's happening.
So I've been Craig Chapman, and thank you very much for